I forgot to do anything about that. I wonder if they can hear it. Nobody has said.
No, I don't think they can.
So, I've been looking in to these McElroy brothers, as it were. And I found a 2-hour YouTube video on the rise and fall of the McElroy family. And for some reason, I watched it. It took like 6 days of watching it a few minutes at a time, but I watched the whole thing. And I learned a lot about them. And a lot of their success involved spinning off into actual play D&D things and stuff like that, too. And it's not that they are not successful now, but they have now reached a point where there are factions. So there are chunks of the internet who love to hate them and things like that. And so it made me realize that it's probably good that we aren't successful. Because there was a lot of shit that was like, oh, you got to deal with this now when you're successful. And that's why this is a problem. And I was like, yeah, no. I mean, right out of the gate, I'm pretty sure they edit their stuff.
Yeah.
Which just immediately fuck that. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Magical Talking Podcast. The only podcast that will go for over 500 episodes and refuse to edit. Seriously, who else is going to do that? That's insane. It's the dumbest. Why would you keep up to that degree with that little effort? And the answer is we're special. I'm Tony.
And I'm William, and this is episode 534.
I feel like we're probably at a point where the remaining listeners we have like hate listening, but it's a drug. Like they can't stop for whatever reason. Because that's how the podcast is for me at this point. Like every moment of this is excruciating, but I physically cannot stop. It is a drug of sorts. It's like obsessive compulsive disorder, but it's obsessive shitty pointless podcast disorder. Like I'm convinced something will go wrong if I saw. So there's this channel on YouTube called Alter, and it does a lot of short horror films, and so I like checking it out because they're like 10-15 minutes long. And this is less of an interesting story because I can't remember what the name of it was, but they had one where the whole thing was somebody who has obsessive compulsive disorder and like dealing with their therapist, and their therapist is like, what are you afraid is going to happen if you don't do these things? And so I think she was taking a small step in that, like she was supposed to only lock the door once instead of 3 times, and so she did everything else. And it's a horror movie, so like shit happens because she didn't do the thing. But I was like, I feel like this is a very insightful and useful metaphor for OCD, because I feel like a lot of people don't get what OCD is really. And I feel I'm like this is a good illustration. It's not that you like to keep tidy. No, it's you are worried that the Boogan are going to get you, or something terrible is going to happen if you don't do it 3 times and stuff. Like, so that's pretty cool. I said I was Tony. Did you say what episode number this was?
Mm-hmm.
What did you say?
534?
I don't know. That's why I'm asking you what you said.
I'm sure that's what I said.
All right. Is that accurate?
Who can tell?
All right. That's our brand, people. And that's a wrap. Let's call it an episode. No. For those of you just joining us, we have a hat. It is magical in that it has its own email address, themagicaltalkinghat@gmail.com. And people like yourselves write in with little comments, topics, questions, notes, things like that. The hat magically transmogrifies those little emails into little note cards, manifest physically within the hat itself. It's willing to show up. That's about it. Servants draw the note cards out of the hat at random, read them on the air, talk about them till we're bored, do that for about an hour. That's the whole show, except the parts that aren't, which is most of it. Also, we're still attempting to figure out if it's possible to curse a real sword.
A real sword?
I showed that to Trish later, and she admitted that she was just bored during it. And I'm like, yep, see, this is not everybody gets us. And presumably them.
I thought it was pretty funny.
I liked it a lot. Did you watch the thing I sent you today?
Yes, but I don't remember what it was.
It combined one of your favorite and least favorite things. Joe Firestone and hypothetical choices.
I love Joe Firestone. Yes, I did that.
I was curious, like, I have been watching some of these episodes of this game show, and I'm like, this is William's worst nightmare.
It did not look fun to me.
But then I'm like, but it's Joe Firestone. So for those of you who aren't us, which is most of you, the game show was on. No, because you'll listen to this podcast later and you'll hear this, and it won't be referring to you because you are us. It was AV Club game show they did, and it was called Pick a Choice. And that's it. Like, you draw randomly two people, I guess, two entities, and then randomly draw a situation, and you have to pick one of the entities for the situation. There are no prizes. There's only one rule involving a sponsor and a poker chip. You just have to pick. Like, you don't get anything from it or whatever. And yeah, it would drive William insane. But he loves Joe Firestone, and she was on it, so I sent it. What's funny to me is just before this, I watched one like yesterday with Aparna Nancherla, and that's why I got into this, because I love her. And she mentioned she and Joe Firestone were doing some sort of project, and I was like, holy crap. But this was like 5 years ago, so I don't know what came of it. But I also just realized that, like, those two are so incredibly similar. It's kind of interesting. I never put that together before, but they have got a very similar vibe going.
Okay.
There's a lot of background noise. Have you got a Roomba going or a fan or some shit?
The air conditioner's on.
See, this is a room the air conditioner doesn't reach to, so I don't have that problem. So how's your week been? It has not been. You've been sitting in that chair the entire time since the last time we recorded.
Yep. Pretty much the entire time. I don't even know what to say. There's been a lot of neurosis, let's put it that way.
Oh, yeah?
And I don't know what to do about it.
Aren't you in classes that literally should tell you what to do about that? Have you asked the professor? Like, literally, like, hey, I need some therapy here. This is what this is for. Let's do it. I got a couch. Let's talk.
Yeah, I just don't even know. Yeah, it's just hard to. Yeah, I tell this to Abby every day. It's like I remember going to school, college. I remember that. I remember going to a little bit of graduate school, and it was never like this. It was never. I don't know. There's just something about it that's different, and it kind of drives me a little bit nuts. I like what I'm doing. I like the subject matter. I like the people I'm interacting with. I mean, there's plenty of positive things about it, but it's just wrapped in this veneer or this candy coating, if you will, of neurotic stuff, like not being able, like, am I doing this assignment correctly? Am I going to get a bad grade on this thing for some reason and I won't even know why? I mean, just like stuff like that. Now, here's the thing. I've gotten, A's on everything in the class so far. There's been like 10 things. And so it's not like I have any reason to think that I don't know what I'm doing or that something's going to go wrong, but I just have it in my head that I don't know what I'm doing and something's going to go wrong. And I can't let go of it no matter what.
I mean, I keep texting you that exact thing word for word, so that is probably part of it, because you don't know what you're doing and something's going to go wrong. By the way, keep in mind, it's been half a lifetime since you did all the rest of that. You've changed, possibly higher education has changed. I mean, stuff's different.
Yeah, I guess.
That doesn't mean it should be like this, but I mean, it means it's not surprising if it's very different. With a little luck, maybe it's just this class, and when you're in a different one, you won't have as much trouble.
I'm kind of hoping that's the case. I'm kind of hoping, well, because this class is the first. I mean, it's often talked about as the first class you're taking in the whole program, and there is a ton of stuff in it that does not pertain to the subject matter. Okay, so the class is called. It's a survey class for human developmental research. So based on that title, you would think that you're just going to spend a lot of time reading human behavioral research and maybe talking about it, maybe, whatever. And there is some of that. Most of the reading is in a textbook, which that's not human. I mean, that's based on human behavioral research, but that's not technically human behavioral research. That's not. It's I wouldn't expect in a survey course for there to be a textbook. That's where most of the writing is, or I'm sorry, reading is from this book. And then easily 2/3 of the course involves learning procedures and resources of this school, or talking about the professional identity of counseling in general and of you in particular as a counselor, and as you in particular with a particular specialty. So it's like there's a lot of vocational development and orientation involved in the class. And when you take that into account, plus reading a textbook, very little of it is actually taking a survey of research in human behavioral or human development. So I think that frustrates me a little bit.
It seems like the class was very poorly named.
Why should I care?
I mean, it's not the class you were expecting, which I would be frustrated by too. It does sound like it makes sense for this to be a first class. It doesn't make sense for it to be titled that. But it also increases the odds, in my opinion, that it is specific to this class. But the important thing is,
I guess that's what I think.
You're getting A's in all the things. It's impossible for that to be a fluke.
I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. So my recent neurosis is sometimes so there's forum conversations, and sometimes the professor answers people, which she's never answered one of mine before. She just grades it, gives it 100 points, 100 out of 100. This time she answered it, which was fine, and pointed out an aspect of the subject matter that I neglected to point out, which is also fine. I mean, I don't think that means any. I don't think it has any bearing on what my grade's going to be or whatever. That's beside the point. The thing that I'm neurotic about isn't what I think my grade's going to be. The thing I'm neurotic about is I answered her. I said,
okay,
thanks, thanks for replying. And I said something about, oh yeah, that's true. This is an important thing, whatever. don't remember everything I said, but after I said it and I reflected on it a while, I was like, was that an appropriate response? I mean, was there anything about that that's going to offend anybody or whatever? Because here's the thing, there is some emphasis about, when you talk to people in the forum, you should, be courteous and, professional. That's often mentioned, but also, I talked to my faculty advisor recently, and she said something that you see all over the site about, what kind of things they expect from their learners. And one of the biggest things is the ability to self-reflect and receive criticism, which is fine. And so after I posted this, I thought to myself, is this going to be considered by her a criticism? And did I respond to it adequately enough to show that I'm okay with criticism? And I'm just fixated on this, and I just can't stop thinking about it. It's the dumbest thing because it's just a little comment. I probably, if I thought about it before I submitted it, I probably would have made it more formal and less casual or something, just to be sure that I didn't, I don't know. I'm certain there's nothing wrong with it because I'm certain I didn't have any kind of flippant attitude or whatever when I sent it. But I don't know how something's going to be taken, right? So I'm just so paranoid, and it's probably going to come to nothing, but I can't get it out of my head.
And it's going to come to nothing. And it doesn't matter.
That's
because you cannot tell the story without laughing hysterically several times. So already. And don't get me wrong, this is not to say that this is an unusual reaction. This is sadly a very common reaction people have. But and there's very little you can do about it except write it out. But you can remind yourself that you already know for certain that it's fun. And try and take comfort in that.
I do tell myself that, but it's not very comforting, honestly. I don't know why, because there's other things too. Like I interact with people very frequently on this discussion forum. So, there's some context, right? Like there's some context to my answering her that if there was even a temptation for her to think I was being disrespectful or flippant or whatever, all of these other times I've talked to her and talked to other people, she knows that I'm not that kind of a person or whatever. So there's plenty of actual data-driven reason for me not to worry about this, but that doesn't matter. Doesn't matter because there it is, and I can't seem to budge the feeling and the dread.
All right. So the point of this episode is to fuck up your life so bad it gives you something else to focus on for a while. Got it. All right. Let's get into some things that William has told me in confidence, people. You would not believe the shit he's into.
Okay.
No, I mean, I think you're different. The world's different. But it does sound like this sort of the nature of this particular class isn't something that would jive well with you. And it would be easier to deal with if you were taking more than one class at a time, but this is the whole of your schooling currently.
It probably pushes just the wrong buttons. That's probably.
I think so.
For me
I
personally,
could see that.
Right.
How much longer is there
on it? I'm working on a paper. Oh, I mean, there's 4 weeks, but I am caught up in a lot of work so that it won't be that long, probably for me, because I'll get some stuff done ahead of time. But I'm in a block because I'm writing a paper right now that's supposed to be due in the 8th week. Right now it's the 5th week, and I'm working on this paper that's due in the 8th week. And it's just, I can't, a lot of the assignments it's not easy to know what you're supposed to do. So the way you figure it out, I mean, you can ask her and she's very good about answering questions, but sometimes I don't even know what questions to ask. So a lot of times the strategy I have to cracking the code on what I'm supposed to be doing is I'll okay, I think I know what that means. So I'll do that piece. And then when I'm done with that piece, sometimes after doing that piece, it'll make me kind of have insight on what this other piece probably means. And so I'll do that piece. And once I'm done sort of doing this piecemeal thing of, I'll have a finished product and I'll read it and I'll read it. And then I'll look at the original instructions and I'll say, oh, okay, yeah, I probably got it right. So that's the process I use, but it takes a long time and it's not easy. And this one's a real puzzler because, well, it just is. And then sometimes, like I did the week 6 assignment already, and it was like 10 pages. The assignment said to do it in like 4 pages. And I thought to myself, surely not. Surely this assignment cannot be a 4-page. That must be a typo or something.
If that's for me, I'm not here.
And I neglected to ask, but someone else asked. And she said, oh yeah, keep it within 3 or 4 pages. And I'm like, oh my God, the only explanation here is that I completely misunderstood this assignment. So I spent the morning kind of redoing that particular assignment. And when I was done, I realized, oh yeah, this is okay. I get it. At first I couldn't even imagine how you could go from 10 pages to 4 pages. But after I did it, I got it. It's like, oh, okay. I totally overthink this and overworked it, which of course that's what I did. And that's probably what's happening with this assignment too. And so it's a real, see, that's the problem. That's why it's pressing all the wrong buttons with me personally, is because it gets back to what you were saying about the whole hypotheticals thing. If you're not pretty clear with me about what your expectations are, I'm not good at guessing it. It's really hard for me to figure
Case in point, this podcast is not supposed to be anything like this, but you clearly misunderstood me from day one.
Right. I'm just good at guessing. I'm not. I mean, sometimes, I know a person.
Well, but you're apparently fine enough in this one that you're doing as well as you are.
Well, that's true. I mean, I am getting there. And it's probably good that I'm being put in a position to have to do this kind of work, because this is probably a skill I need to learn to do a little better.
100%. I think this is highlighting a lot of things that you'll need to improve upon.
Right. So I think
honestly, I think those are the best intro courses, are the ones where it's like, yeah, all the stuff you're bringing to this, kind of bullshit. You need to learn some new shit. That has opened up a lot of disciplines for me. But it is tricky to get there because, you're a competent 50-year-old individual. And so the tendency to be like, yeah, but I literally have decades of experience and reading and stuff related to this. You're telling me that's useless here? Come on.
Well, and nobody's telling me it's useless. It's more of a, yeah. I mean, I just need to.
No, sorry. I'm telling you it's useless.
It's more about, it's almost less about skill as it is about removing blocks to skill, right? It's like, because when I'm figuring out how to do these things, doing them is not hard. The hard part is removing the obstacles that I put in my own way, right?
But then don't do that.
I know, right? And
Stop doing it.
I got to figure out how to not do that, because
as Bob Newhart would say,
if I just stopped doing that, it would actually be quite, straightforward and easy. But
that's actually my take on counseling, is the Bob Newhart approach.
You mean like his original show where he was a therapist?
No. I mean like an old sketch that he had for years and years and years and years, where you'd go into the therapist and you'd tell him what was wrong and he'd say, stop it. Just stop it.
Yeah.
Stop doing it.
Stop.
It's pretty effective. Just stop putting blocks in front of you.
Yeah, I know. I wish I could just do that.
Put the blocks away. Put them back in the toy box. We're not playing with blocks, though. This is serious.
So I suppose as time goes on, and if I stick to it, and if I don't, if I let myself struggle, which you have to do, to earn, to grow, whatever, then eventually I'll get there.
This is struggling over here, by the way.
That you're struggling,
I'm demonstrating for people. Struggling.
but it's not it's there's a lot of neurosis in the meantime, and it's very uncomfortable. And I didn't sleep last night, and it's like I just want to get through, you know, just want to get through it.
That's how I feel about every podcast.
Anyway, how was your week?
I've been sick for most of it,
Oh, that's
which
too
is
bad.
not good. Yeah. It appears Trish and I might have gotten a touch of the old food poisoning.
Oh no.
Because she had some bad reaction to something, and then she was better, but then I haven't been great. So yeah, this week's been a little off. We finished Shadow and Bone. Couple episodes from the end, I decided I officially did not like it. The end did not change that. I did feel like there were a lot of things in the show that if I was reading them in the book probably would be better. There were a lot of relationships and things that it's like, oh, second episode since you've met each other and we're supposed to believe you're in love now. Okay. Like a lot of that. We managed to get rapey near the end. It was vaguely metaphorical, a la Maleficent, but we got very rapey, and I was very displeased with that. Yeah, I just hit that thing where I'm like, I don't care what happens to any of these people. So I'll be out for second season, which is gonna get.
Yeah, I heard.
We tried to finish Pose. So Pose had a 2-part finale split over 2 weeks. And if you didn't know that and just watched the first part and thought that was the series finale of the show, it's a fairly unsatisfying series finale. But then we found out there's another episode and we haven't watched it yet. So hopefully that will be better. Because we were not happy with the first half. In general, I think I'm less happy with this season than most of them, but it's hard to say. And we watched the first episode of Loki. Have you watched the first episode of Loki?
We did, yeah.
What'd you think?
I actually liked it. I mean, keep in mind, we haven't watched the whatever Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
I haven't watched that. We don't really have an
Us
interest
neither.
in any of these things. But since this involves some time travel and I know
the Tennessee Valley Authority.
A few other things made us interested, so we went ahead and watched it.
Am I the only one who's put that together, by the way?
I didn't think of it, but you're right.
We were taught this in school when we were taught about the New Deal. I remember the TVA, the Tennessee Valley Authority, not the Time Variance Association or whatever it is.
But I liked it. I thought it was pretty solid. I was pretty impressed with it, actually. But that was, I'm not running through the streets telling everybody to watch it or anything. It was fine. It's good.
No, I assume that's what you're doing before we started recording.
Well, did you like it?
Yeah. Here's the deal. When I was watching WandaVision in the beginning, I'm like, what the fuck is happening? I don't understand how this is a TV show. I don't understand what's supposed to be happening. This is insane. The first episode of Loki basically went exactly how I expected the first episode of Loki to go. Yeah, nothing about it surprised me in the slightest.
Right. Agreed.
So at this point, I'm like, yeah, cool. What are you gonna do with it? Like, it was perfectly fine, and it could be the first episode of an incredible series. It could also be the first episode of a really bad series, or the first episode of a mediocre series, because it was very much what it. Also, and I would love for the show to prove me wrong, I think Owen Wilson is a horrible casting decision in that role. I think if anything is going to ruin that show, it's putting fucking Owen Wilson in that part. He already is annoying me, and it's not the character. It's because it's Owen fucking Wilson.
Gotcha.
I don't like thinking of the Loki TV show as a very late sequel to Wedding Crashers. Or even worse, a very late Zoolander 3. I don't like that idea either. He has no business fucking being in this.
Okay.
So I don't like that.
I don't have a problem with him in particular. I thought what's
we've all seen the Owen Wilson posters on your wall. We know.
I thought what's his name playing Loki? What is his name?
Tom Hiddleston, or Hiddles, as we like to call him.
I thought he did a really good job. I thought there was a lot of I thought there was some pretty for such a short show that was cramming so much into it. I thought he delivered his scenes really well.
Oh, absolutely.
I was convinced.
As always. Always.
Yeah, I was convinced. So
the man is a professional actor in the best sense of the word, always has been.
Yeah, very good. So
even when he's in a shit movie, he does a very commendable job, of which I can't think of one besides Crimson Peak. So even when he's in Crimson Peak.
The Kong Skull Island didn't give him much to do. But
fair, I didn't see that.
He he was good in it, but it didn't give him much to do. It was kind of sad. They took such a fine actor, and
yeah, they gave him enough money.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't even. I mean, it looks fine. We're totally gonna keep watching. It has the potential to be really good. I was just like, yeah, this is what I expected.
Well, I mean, I think people are left wanting to keep watching it. I don't think you watch it and go, I'm not interested in what happens next. I think you kind of want to see where it goes.
It's causing me difficulty in that their most strange and original and just batshit idea was their first one. It has left me with a set of unresolved expectations since. Because we watched the first episode of Falcon and Winter Soldier and I'm like, yeah, these are just TV shows. Like, I don't know what the fuck WandaVision was. And that was what I loved about it, was that I didn't know what was going on. And I was very excited to find out. And I'm like, no, I mean, I'll watch it. It seems fine, but I'm not excited to see what happens.
So, people are making a big deal out of the fact that, in Loki's dossier, it said his sex was fluid.
Yes, Trish is very excited about that too.
And of course, in the comics, Loki has been female for certain periods of time. So there's, people are asking questions about,
yeah,
is this a long-term deal for Hiddleston, or is he going to pass it off to a female actor, or what?
I think this is how Hiddleston announces to the world that he's transitioning into being a woman via the TV show.
Sure.
No, Trish mentioned that too.
Isn't he, as a character and in the movies as well, a shapeshifter? I mean, that makes sense.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, so he's basically, when he presents as the male that he presents as, that's just a choice he's making. It doesn't really, he could present as anything else, any other race, any other species. He could do whatever he wants. So,
so they could recast him really easy.
Yeah, they could. Exactly. Although he does such a good job, though, it would be, but I'm sure someone else could do a good job too. So it's fine.
We also watched a movie called 7 Lessons to Eternal Bliss or something like that.
Sounds like you were really impressed with it.
No, it just had one of those overly busy titles that I can't remember, because who the fuck cares? It's kind of like Becky Chambers, who I keep telling everybody is a great author, but her titles are really annoying and unmemorable. The books are awesome. The titles, A Close and Common Orbit. What the fuck? All right, whatever. Also, that title, wholly metaphorical in ways that I'm not even sure I entirely get. Like, yeah, it's just annoying. So this is the same thing. Is a very weird Black comedy. The basis of it is there's a couple that have moved to LA from Ohio, and they find out their apartment was the sighting of a cult leader's suicide. And the cult is now set up such that in order to join them in the eternal hereafter, you're supposed to kill yourself in that bathtub. So they have a problem of cult members breaking into their house on a regular basis to try and kill themselves in their bathtub. But there's a whole process involved. So if other people's are there, you kind of have a duel over it. And there's a whole thing. And there's this one cop who's like just in charge of these deaths. So he shows up and he's like very used to it, and they get to know him really well, and they start looking at and the cult leader in general, who's dead, is played by Taika Waititi. The cop is played by Dan Harmon. One of the couple is Kate Micucci, and the movie is just full of amazing. Maria Bamford is in there. Brian Posehn is in there. The dude from Kids in the Hall who did that long stint on Superstore is in there. It's not a great movie, but it's entertaining and it's very original, and I like that. It's a very goofy movie. At first, we thought Taika Waititi directed it because it has that vibe to it, but no, he just started it. It was somebody else's movie. But yeah, seven lessons. That part I know I got right. And to Eternal something. But it's pretty funny. I might be getting tired of Genshin Impact. We'll have to see. I watched a lot of dumb movies this week. I think that's mostly it. Slept a lot. Wasn't feeling very good. Today I grilled like 4 pounds of chicken outside.
Why'd you do that?
Because then you put it in the refrigerator and you got cold, very tasty roasted chicken that you can make in things that doesn't involve heating up the house. Like salad or in a quesadilla or things like that. It's definitely time for me to clean the grill though.
Oh.
Like the chicken is very nicely cooked. The very outside of it has like black from just like greasy smoke because of so much stuff that is stuck in there. So I gotta work on that. Well, William looks like he's fighting the urge to flee, so it's probably something time to draw out of the hat. That's how I always know. William's like, get me out of here. And I'm like, it is time.
No, it's not. I'm very tired, and again, I'm suffering from, even now, from neurosis. So
what kind of sword?
I think a real one.
I'm
unclear about it, but I think a real one. Just do this. Whatever it is you do for a Nerf sword, you could probably just do it for a real sword.
I mean, I can do it. The Nerf sword, yeah. What kind of sword is it?
A real one.
Oh, you're really killing me here.
I just thought that was hilarious. And it never got old for me. Every time it happened, I thought it was so funny.
$100. That wasn't the question. For those of you who aren't us, which again, almost all of you, you can, if you put in Mabim Bam Curse a Real Sword, you'll find some version of it out there. That's another thing I found out. The McElroy Brothers podcast is called My Brother and Me, but it is referred to publicly as Mabim Bam because that's what that spells. All right, this is from Azure Talon. He's already sad about it. What mythological god or being do you hold a fascination and or kinship 2, spelled TOO. And it's signed Anubis Talon, which I think may give us his answer. So I always have thought of Azure Talon as somebody who, collects and judges the dead. I mean, that's how I've always known him to be.
Mm-hmm.
How about you?
Oh, you don't have an answer?
I might. I'm asking you. Maybe your answer's better and I'll steal it.
No, I seem to have a fascination with goddesses who can be portrayed in a singular or tripartite form.
Mm. So like legs over there, torso over there, head over there.
So probably the most interest, the triple goddess configuration that I often am most fascinated with is the ones where they represent fate or time or what have you, which a lot of cultures have fate being represented by a woman and or 3 women. Sometimes it can be either one, sometimes it's both, sometimes it's one at a time. But there's, the triple goddess thing can apply to a lot of different things. Like I recently learned, I didn't know this, that in Greek myth, there are 3 sisters who hang out together and they represent, like together they represent discontentedness.
Yeah.
Each one, one I think represents beggars and beggary. For that's one of them.
Oh, that. Beggary.
No. And the other 2, one represents specifically like discontentedness, and the third one represents, I don't remember now, but something like in that ballpark. But I mean, they're sisters. It's not a triple goddess situation, but it's still, that fascinates me. That's like, why, we have 3 goddesses and, they kind of represent 3 aspects of kind of a similar thing, just like the fates and things like that. And I don't know, that interests me quite a bit whenever I see something like that.
Your fetish for triplets has a long and storied history on this podcast. I don't know why I was surprised.
I'm even more fascinated if the person can be represented by just by a single person also. It's just,
they can be represented by a single person. It's their lawyer presenting you with a restraining order.
So yeah, that kind of, I'm interested in those stories. And
Hecate and the Norn.
Yeah, most of them are European that I know of. I'm sure
3-Armed Sally.
I'm sure there's others that are outside of Europe, but most of the ones I'm familiar with are European, and I'm interested. They fascinate me for some reason.
The Gabor sisters.
Okay.
I feel like they counted when they were all alive. Are any of them still alive? Are any Gabors still alive?
I don't know.
If you know if the Gabor sisters are alive, tell us on the blog, magicaltalkinghat.com. Or write and ask us, and we still won't know. themagicaltalkinghat@gmail.com.
Do you have an answer to Azure Talon's question?
Well, I mean, I've got an easy answer that everybody should already know, is that I have a thing about angels.
Oh, yeah, right.
I definitely have a thing about angels. Originally, I mean, obviously, just the whole person with wings is always a cool idea that some of us really like. I think I've always been fascinated by the idea of beings who are responsible for ensuring fate or destiny or the grand plan. Because it's a very tricky idea in human society. There are a lot of people who think that's their job. usually tied into law and law enforcement. And there are extreme versions of that, and of course it's all human, so it's ridiculous. So I love the idea of somebody who like that's really what they're supposed to do. And then of course, like, what if that's not what they want to do, but that's literally their reason for being? I find all that kind of shit fascinating, and the whole idea of will without free will and the power to do so many things, but not the power to choose to do them. You can only do them on someone else's behalf. I like that kind of stuff. So, I mean, I've always been a big fan of dragons. Who hasn't been?
Yeah, dragons, right? Mm-hmm.
Dragons are awesome.
Gargoyles.
Gargoyles are pretty cool. Disney helped with that.
Tricksters in general.
Tricksters are fun. It's fun to look at them because, again, putting modern sort of social things over the top, because it's a weird idea to have a god whose whole thing is they just like doing jokes. Like, don't get me wrong, that's 98% of who I am, but that's the point. It's only 98%. So it's really fun to take trickster spirits and be like, what actually motivates? And I find that stuff fun.
I have an idea about that. It's just my idea, but maybe it'll be interesting.
It's a trick, people.
So, oftentimes a trickster character will
take umbrage with how they suspect you will order sushi.
Right. There's like 3 different ways that they're often, and I'm being arbitrary here. There's probably 10 different ways, but I'm going to talk about 3 different ways that they're often perceived either as being bad, good, or stupid. It's almost always one of those 3 things. I mean, not always, but this seems like pretty frequently. So in my mind, from the trickster's perspective, I imagine that all they're doing is going through the world looking for people's buttons, and when they find them, they just push them, and they just push them until the button breaks. and the person can perceive that as something that teaches them a valuable lesson, and so the trickster's good. They can treat that as something super annoying, and so the trickster is bad. Or realizing that the trickster actually works on this very simple concept of, hey, I'm just looking for buttons and push them until they break. The trickster's actually pretty easy to fool and to trick himself. He's not really motivated by anything except this simple. He's so predictable and so easy to understand what he's about that you can very easily fool him or her or it. So I think of the tricksters mostly just going through the world, looking for buttons. Oh, there's a button, and just pushing it till it breaks. And however that person responds to that reality, that determines whether or not they see the trickster as good, bad, or stupid.
I hate that. I absolutely hate that. I'll tell you why. Because I just know people like that. Quite a few, and they are some of my least favorite people on the planet. I hate that. I'm like, that is the ultimate hubris of being like, this is how I entertain myself, is pushing the buttons on other people.
Right, exactly.
And that's what it is. It's like, well, my life would be boring if I didn't do this one thing to you that made you dance uncomfortably. So I'm going to do that thing. Out of boredom.
I don't even think, though, I don't think of the trickster as a troll. I don't think of the trickster as thinking one way or the other. It's just a button that's pushed until it's broken. I don't think the trickster cares if it hurts or helps or what.
And at that point, it becomes mythological.
Yeah.
But the problem is, what you're saying is, so there's a being whose very foundational nature makes them act the way your least favorite normal humans in the world act. That ceases to be interesting to me. I'm like, oh, okay. And there's also volcanoes. So it's just another way in which the world sucks. Like, this is not like, oh, volcanoes. Here's another natural disaster, trickster spirits.
Well, but again, as I said, you could take it however you want. You could learn a valuable. You could be entertained by it. You know,
Yeah,
people.
and it might happen. The very concept abhors. I hate it. I hate it. I
I mean,
hate the
people.
idea. I'm like,
Why do you, why does
if
a
that
person
existed,
why does a person go to a movie? They go to a movie so the person who made the movie can push their buttons. I mean, some people are entertained by people pushing their buttons. They get something out of it. So it's
it
not
depends on your
necessarily bad.
definition of button, but also,
Yeah.
yeah, and when it's voluntary, it's fine. It's usually not voluntary. There are not a lot of myths about people going and seeking out trickster spirits and being like, "Hey, push my buttons."
Yeah,
You could write those.
yeah. Well,
It's essentially like the amateur philosopher and Inquire Within, except it's like, I'm gonna fuck with you. You feel like being fucked with? Come here, give me $20. I'll fuck with you. I have a
I
very busy schedule and I may cancel on you at no notice just to fuck with you. So be prepared.
I feel like
I
I've
want to write this story now. I love this story.
got a trickster in my head that I have to uh you know, I have to make sure, and that trickster would do all kinds of things that I wouldn't want it to do with, you know, I wouldn't want to do these things. I wouldn't want the trickster driving and doing these things. But sometimes the trickster in my head, you know, has insights or has or I shouldn't say the trickster has insights. I can get insights from the trickster, or I can use what the trickster's doing and turn it into something useful. But I can't let the trickster drive the bus. I mean, because that would just be a disaster, and I would not be happy if that happened.
Also, you'd have to have a long question with the trickster about where this bus came from and if somebody might be missing it.
But yeah, I there's definitely, I feel like there's a definite trickster sort of archetype inside my head that I usually I'm just fine with, but sometimes it's
I
very not.
agree, but I don't think it's part of your personality. I think it's something that got snuck in there a long time ago and has been fucking with you for decades.
No, it's part of my personality.
It's essentially like a season 1 Legion thing. You have the Shadow King in your head.
Yeah, it only occasionally is. Well, and you know, that might be, you know, circling back to what we talked about before. You know, my neurosis could be related somewhat to this idea of, okay, so you know, I have this idea that this archetype is in my head, and I find it useful for various things, but maybe I'm afraid that sometimes it's gonna sneak its, you know, its will in moments where I don't want or I didn't intend, and someone's going to get harmed, and I'm going to feel bad because this, you know, this little devil got out when I didn't really intend for it to. I think I do worry about that.
I did that in college. I developed 6 different personalities that I determined were certain aspects of myself, and I gave them all names and had very strong feelings about them, and basically would let certain ones take over for certain periods of time, and then sometimes ones that I didn't like took over for certain periods of time, and that was awful too. And it was all just, you know, the drama of college. I somehow thought this was a useful way to describe something that was happening to me internally. And what it really is was just a way to find patterns that didn't exist and excuse a lot of terrible behavior. But I had a lot, and one of them was in fact a trickster. And I can't remember if I just like to push people's buttons. I feel like maybe that was it. That was not a good thing.
Well, you know, human beings, I mean, that's what we do when we communicate with one another, is we're not pushing buttons in the sense of trying to harm someone or manipulate someone. But when we communicate with one another, that's really what we're doing. I mean, we're trying to reach into the other person's sort of consciousness and excite certain thoughts and feelings that will help them understand what we're trying to say. And as I said before, when you go to a movie, you really are looking. You want whoever made that movie to basically push your buttons, like it's a voluntary thing. So I think the insights I get from the trickster are insights in how to do that, not maliciously or against someone's will or anything like that, but how to do it in a way that conveys proper meaning and creates a shared experience that we're both going to find edifying, hopefully, and uplifting. Because the trickster has that knowledge. It's just the trickster doesn't care if that knowledge is used to make the person feel good, bad, comfortable, uncomfortable, doesn't care what the effect is. Could the effect be a good effect for the person, but the trickster doesn't care. But I can care, so I can mediate that process, and it can help me be a good storyteller or a good communicator. See, that's the way I conceptualize it in my head.
All filmmakers are tricksters. Got it.
I'm saying that's the way it works.
I don't know what it was, but William was really pissed off at Terrence Malick this week. I don't know what was going on. There was some very specific shit.
What are you talking about?
I just picked a filmmaker at random and assumed you were mad at them.
Oh.
I thought Terrence Malick was a good
So
one.
So you're talking about the trickster that you kind of perceive in yourself. Is this something you still perceive, or
No. I considered it both inaccurate and unhelpful to my psyche. So I ditched that stuff years ago because it was essentially, well, A, it was a way to make me seem more interesting than I was, which was very big in college and in my 20s in general. But B, it was frequently just an excuse to act ways that otherwise would be inappropriate. That was this part of me. That wasn't the normal Tony part of me.
Oh, interesting.
This is now that I have drawn down this particular aspect of myself, it's on the rest of you to deal with that particular aspect, whether you like it or not.
Interesting.
It's not on me to try and stop doing that. So yeah, that was a bunch of bullshit. And I just figured in general, it's probably not good mental health to compartmentalize different personalities as parts of your own. I figured that in the long term, that's probably not a good tool set.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it. Although I think it can be helpful to acknowledge inside one's own consciousness different, different attitudes, different roles.
Yeah.
I mean, but
it's just not healthy to make them discrete. They are all aspects of one person, and
name them and like almost induce a kind of multiple personality disorder. Yeah, that's not good.
No, that is exactly what occurred to me in a few years after college.
But there's definitely a balance to be struck there, because one of the things that I run into, and this is my whole life in being interested in human behavioral science, and of course I'm running into it headlong while I'm taking classes in counseling, is a counseling approach that the focus of the counseling approach is to integrate a person's identity or whatever. And I can follow that reasoning to a point, but sometimes I feel like it can get, especially under a practitioner who's not very skilled or sophisticated, that can get pretty narcissistic, right? Just fixating on who you are, what your identity is, establishing almost an antagonistic relationship between self and other. It's a tricky thing. I mean, Jung talked about, and he and other people talked about self-actualizing and things like that. And when you read Jung, you get that he doesn't really intend for people to be like self-fixated, about, oh, this is who I am and this is my identity and I have to sort of assert that against the world. but I think a lot of people, including people in the profession, sometimes get carried away with that term identity, and they kind of overdo it.
I had a conversation with some friends the other day, and including the friend who recently transitioned to being a woman. And a different friend of ours was saying, you seem like you're still freaked out and paranoid like you always were, because they suffer from pretty bad anxiety. But like you just seem sort of happier about things. And they were like, yeah. And they were like, are y'all familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs? And I was like, yes, for reasons that none of us want to go into. Trish and I regularly talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And so we were talking about how the top of that is self-actualization. And this friend has just discovered, like, she's never done any of that. And the stuff she's doing right now and she's like, so y'all just work on yourselves? Like, you do things just to like improve yourselves? I didn't even know that was the thing. Like, yeah. That's self. And I was like, based on this, I am the most self-actualized person you've ever met. Of course, now Maslow's somebody's saying that in actuality, I'm just a narcissist, but I prefer super actualized.
I'm not calling you a narcissist. Are you referring to me? I'm not calling
you
a narcissist.
You're calling me a narcissist, where in reality, I am just super actualized.
Oh, okay.
You don't understand, because you're not there yet. You're not at the tip of the pyramid.
No, that's right.
You're still somewhere around where fruits and veggies are. Wait, that might be a different pyramid. You're not all the way at the top of that one.
No, because that's sweets and fats, right?
I was gonna say I am solidly at the top of that pyramid. I am just balanced on that tip there, but it's on both of them. Yeah. Maslow's hierarchy of fats and sweets. This guy.
Is that the title of the episode?
I mean, I think it has to be. It wasn't gonna be. I was gonna go with super self-actualized, but Maslow's hierarchy of fats and sweets seems to be. It feels like destiny.
Oh wow, that's good.
So there's a show on YouTube. I think it's on Funny or Die's channel, and I think it's pretty old now. But Trish and I just discovered it. We're cracking up over it. It's called Under a Rock with Tig Notaro. And they're short episodes. They're like 8 to 15 minutes long. And the whole deal is Tig doesn't watch a lot of TV or keep up with a lot of pop culture. So it's an interview show where somebody pretty famous shows up and she has to figure out who they are. And she never knows. And it's amazing. And the celebrities love it because the celebrities do not ever hang around with anybody who doesn't know who they are. And they find it awesome. So I've seen her with Glenn Howerton from Always Sunny, Kaylee Cuoco from Big Bang Theory, Lena Headey, Cersei herself from Game of Thrones, like James Vanderbeek from Dawson's Creek, like, and she has no idea, and it's pretty awesome. I would recommend checking that out. Tig is awesome. As I have said, I don't appear to love Tig as much as most people who saw her in Army of the Dead, but I love Tig. Tig's good.
Yeah.
All right, people. If you're Tig, go to the blog, themagicaltalkinghat.com, and tell us about it. Also, how narcissistic / self-actualized are you? Also, what other crimes against humanity can we attribute to the trickster spirit that has possessed William since he was a young child?
Yeah, I'd like to know that.
Also, do you have more questions in general about anything? How to do therapy, how to self-actualize with fats and sugars, how to curse a real sword. I mean, there's a lot of things. Write us, themagicaltalkinghat@gmail.com.
Real
and
sword.
then All right. Somebody else's bit. We need to stop. We started this podcast stealing things from the McKenzie brothers, and now we're stealing from the McElroy brothers. We have this thing about brothers, apparently. Except for William, who has a thing about triplets.
Yeah, funny.
Ah.